Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time zone you are in. We do have quite a few people registered today, over about 300. And so we'll give everyone just a few minutes to get logged in. While we're doing that, if you could just type in the question and answer panel where you are coming in from, and I'll try to capture everyone live. So I see, oh, actually quite a few of you've already started typing in here. That's wonderful. I'm so glad to see that. Whoops, I lost my panel. Trying to make it bigger and I clicked out of it. There we go. Okay, so excellent. We have Eli coming in, sorry, not Eli, Ali coming in from Cairo, Egypt, Daniel coming in from Laconia, and we have Toronto, Canada joining us, Kansas City, Columbia, Missouri. This is awesome. I love seeing the dispersed crowd here. We have Kevin coming in from Ireland, Sarah from the UK, Melina from Germany, from Munich. Awesome. We have Barcelona on the line, Sweden, Texas, Beth from Ohio. Ginny is in Salt Lake, Utah. I'm in Utah as well, Ginny. So great. Glad to have you. We have India on the line, Vancouver, British Columbia. Excellent. Excellent. So glad to see everyone joining us. We are going to give everyone just another minute, and I'm going to make sure I have everything closed because I have a tendency to get people chatting with me over email or something that can become a distraction. I highly recommend everyone close their emails. It does help you focus on the presentation a little bit more. And Michael Kilkelly is joining us today, so it's always fun to have Michael. He's a wealth of knowledge. If any of you follow him on social media, you'll know that he provides a lot of great information working with Autodesk products. So thanks, Michael, for joining us.
Happy to be here. I'm in
Excellent.
my home office, so that's a ceiling fan above my head, right there. Not a funny hat. So
It's your halo. You're an
here we go.
angel.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Let's see if we had more people join. Looks like our numbers are starting to level off. So why don't we go ahead and jump in. Today we are going to be talking about communicating design review directly in Revit. So this is really a great topic. Michael actually pulled together a course for us on this topic in our connected learning experience, and he did a fabulous job. I think it's great when, if you don't have BIM 360 or Navisworks or something to help you coordinate and collaborate with your team, using the Revit tools will help you do that. And Michael did a fabulous job showing us how to do this. So go ahead and go to the next slide there, Michael. All right, so for those of you that are not familiar with Michael Kilkelly, he is the principal at Arch Smarter. He does a lot of different trainings and consulting for people who are using Autodesk products, more specifically the Revit and the building line of products. Michael, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. I've been a practicing architect for a long time, almost over 20 years or so. And I worked for a number of different firms, and it was, dealing with deadlines, dealing with late nights, dealing with the occasional all-nighter that led me to start thinking about productivity and how we could work smarter, which then led me to Arc Smarter, and then looking at software and looking at ways that we can automate processes, all with the intent of making our lives easier as architects, as engineers, and also being able to deliver better products. So the idea is how can we do more, do better work, and then deliver it in less time so we can have a life outside of work. So that was really the driving goal for Arc Smarter.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. That's why I'm in the training industry myself. I've been teaching people how to use Autodesk products for, I won't date myself, but longer than I realized. But it's very rewarding to be able to help people, work smarter so that they can get back to their families, which It's amazing. We're all getting back to our families right now, aren't we? All working remotely. And so just by a quick raise of hands in the attendee panel, how many of you have found yourselves working remote for the first time? I'm just really curious how many of you have found that. I see a few hands going up. David, Joven, Karina, Kyle. So sorry, there's the dogs in the background. One second. So sorry about that. Okay. Okay. So quite a few of you. So you're probably experiencing some of the background noise on your side as well. That's a key reason why we do keep everyone muted. If you go to the next slide there, Michael.
Mhm.
So sorry. Okay, so all the lines are muted to help reduce background noise like you're hearing at my house now. But if you do have a question, we do want these to be very interactive. And so as you have questions, you can either raise your hand in that participants panel, or you can add a question in the Q&A panel. That's a key reason why I ask some of these key questions up front, so that you can get to know where to raise your hand, as well as where to add questions if you just want to ask a question in the Q&A panel. After the session, a link to the recorded session will be emailed to you, and so be on the lookout for that. But let's not go too much further. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide there, Michael. So for those of you that are familiar with the meetup program, we do have several meetups that you can attend. Of course, the fourth Tuesday of every month is the architectural meetup. We also have the BIM manager meetup happening next week on Tuesday. If you are, working in building engineering and not necessarily architecture, we do have a brand new building engineering meetup. We've held it once. We held it last month, and it's at the end of this week on Thursday. And so definitely, find the meetup that works best for you. The architectural meetup is great because we do a lot of Revit content, but we're doing AutoCAD content as well, and other pieces of the Autodesk line that really help architects and building engineers work smarter. So next slide there. And our meetups are typically connected to a class or a course in our connected learning experience. And so this month, the course that Michael had created for us in our connected learning experience is strategies for better communicating design review directly in Revit. And you can find that under the architectural discipline, under the conceptual design for architects. I love that he pulled this together because, again, not everyone has BIM 360 or Navisworks to do that project coordination and collaboration, but Michael was able to find a way to do it without those extra tools. Use the tools that you have. That's the key. Make sure that you use those tools to their fullest extent. And so next slide there, Michael.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm sure you're tired of hearing me. Let's turn it over to Michael, where he is going to show you how to create some specific styles and symbols so that you can do that coordination right in Revit. So Michael, it's over
All
to you.
right, sounds good. All right, it's great to be here. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for the intro. And as Michelle said, what we're going to be looking at is just some pretty straightforward, pretty easy ways that you can do design review inside of the Revit model. And there's a lot of reasons why you would want to do this. As Michelle said, you may not have access to tools to be able, other additional tools to be able to do your review in the model. And again, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. There's a lot of different products you can use. The benefit to doing it inside of Revit, though, is it's the same software that you're used to using. So you can actually make a comment, make an annotation, make a review note in the model, and then somebody who is also working in the model can pick it up. So you're putting the comment where the work is going to needs to happen. So there doesn't need to be, you don't need to go outside of the program. You don't need to have two screens up and, oh, here's the comment. What are they pointing at? By doing it inside of Revit, it's right there. So whoever needs to do the comments can see it. Another benefit too is that you can use the standard Revit tools to be able to schedule and kind of review a lot of those comments. I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can do it, but it's the same tool set. We're just using them in a slightly different way. So I want to go through kind of from easiest, to slightly more difficult ways that you can do annotation, and ways you can do review comments. And probably the easiest way, and let me jump through here, is you can create additional styles. So for example, here I'm in a sample model. It's a medical office building, or like a clinic essentially. And we're going to just use this as our demo, and this is actually in the course. This is the model that I use as well. So we'll go through it, and again, the simplest way is, you can see I have some red text and I have some red dimensions. These are just standard Revit text note types. If I click on edit and I edit the type, um, all I did is I gave it a name called review note, and then I just changed the color to red. That way visually it will jump out, and that I can see that on the page. Oh, okay, in the view, that's something I need to take a look at. And I can add a note, so different from our other kinds of notes. Same thing with the dimension, it's called review dimension. So if I wanted somebody to check this dimension and confirm it, I could just change its type. They say, oh, okay, that looks good. I can change it back to my regular type, and then it's no longer red. So just using color as a way to cue somebody that, oh, okay, something, I need to review this. This is a no. Typically when I'm making a Revit template, I'll make review text note types and I'll make review dimension types. And then I've seen firms where they would have a color-coded system. So red might be check, like blue might be something confirmed or critical. And so you can develop a color coding system to mean different things. And as long as everybody's on the same page, that's great. So, everybody's going to look at that and they're going to know what that means. Now, the downside of this is that it's easy to, if I were to print this sheet or put this view on a sheet, you may send out your notes, and you may print your PDF or print a hard copy, and then you're going to have your notes as part of that. So it requires a little bit of discipline to kind of go through and either scrub those out, or you create particular review views, so that the review views are only going to have these dimensions or these text note types. But there's the option, the likelihood really that somebody could draw something, they could put a piece of text in there and use the wrong style, and it could kind of go out. So it requires a little bit of discipline on your end in order to make sure things like that don't happen. But I definitely recommend using kind of review text note types, review dimension types, just as a good way to sort of, again, color code and let people know, alert people to things to check out. So that is a good way. You'll also see here above this, this is actually a generic annotation family. So let me click on this. I'm going to edit it. This is sort of a step up from that, using the just text note and dimensions. And this is, again, it's a generic annotation family. And I've created some instance parameters in here. Let's pull that over. And you'll see that there's a parameter called assign to, there's reviewer, date, and comment. And then I also have a visibility parameter in here called is urgent. And so what that does, if I click on this text here, sorry, there we go. I have a visibility parameter on it. I'll pull this over. So I can turn that urgent text on and off. So this allows me, when I create my types, I have one type which is urgent, and then I have one type that's normal. And all I'm doing by switching the type is turning that urgent text on or off. So if I go back into my model here, I can switch, oops, let me go right to the right view, there we go. So I can switch the type to just a regular note or an urgent note. And all I'm doing is basically identifying it with that little block of text. The good thing though is that I can then schedule, and we'll take a look at that in a minute, but I can schedule these notes and I could sort by what are normal review notes and what are urgent review notes. And then I can go through these, and once it's done, I can sort of add additional parameters if I want to indicate status, or I could also take a look at, if there's other things, other fields that I want to track in there. And you'll notice as well, once I insert that, let's say I want to insert, I'm going to go to create similar, and let's just place this one over here. It comes in just as a box, and then I can choose to add a leader to it, and then I can pinpoint exactly where I want that to go. So the benefit to this method, as opposed to just using a text note type, is that I can group a lot more information. So who's the reviewer? Who are they assigning this particular task to? What's the date? What's the comment? So I'm grouping all of this information together, and it makes it, it's basically like a stamp. I can put a stamp on the drawing, and I can use it to track. So once I've done these and I've placed these, I can create a schedule specifically for that. So if it's a generic annotation, I can schedule these, and that's super helpful. I have one already. It's called review notes. And you can see here, let me open up just so we can take a look at this. This is a generic annotation schedule, and it's looking at the assigned to, the comment, the date, the reviewer, and the type. And then I could also add the is urgent field in here as well. So I can see that, is it urgent, is it not, what's the type? And I could sort and group these as well by that is urgent. So right now I don't have any urgent notes. If I switch back to my view, here it is right here. Let's make this one urgent. And then if we switch back into our schedule, sorry, I hopped back to the family. Let me go, that's it, back into our schedule. And let's sort and group by is urgent. We will add a blank line between them. Sending, okay. So we can group then our notes based on which ones are urgent, which ones are normal. So this would, be helpful for us. That way we can kind of triage, where our comments are. And again, this is a real benefit to using a generic annotation note as opposed to just using a standard text note or a dimension. And I think you could use these kind of in conjunction. Plus, I can also go in here when I'm in the schedule, I could click on highlight and model. So I can go to exactly where that particular note is. So if I want to go through and scrub my model and either remove these, or if I want to go through and just make sure, make sure they're on views that aren't going to be on sheets or anything like that, I could use that technique using the schedule to go back and forth between my note blocks, my review blocks, and then, the overall look of it. So I really like this approach because it gives you a lot of flexibility, but it still, keeps it together as a concrete thing. So when I've done that and I'm going through and I'm creating my views, another thing that I can do is that I could actually create specific review view types. So you'll see over here, this floor plan, the floor plan type is called review floor plan. And so if I were to edit that, all I'm doing is I'm editing the view type and I'm just giving it a name called review as the prefix. You'll see I've added a view template. We'll look at that in a second. But with that, when I create that particular view type, what it does is if I go into my project browser, it's going to group my plans based on that. So if I'm creating views specifically for review, I can group those together. So I have a couple of views here that are set up already, and they have that review as part of the file name, but they also have the review view type. So this is great because, again, I can just group things together. I can see my view types however they are, wherever they're identified, and it makes it a lot easier. And I could also just do that by using a naming convention. So I could just, you can see these views have review as part of the name, but giving them a particular view type that's specific to review is also helpful as well. And that just makes it easier to see things in the project browser. Now, taking this sort of another step forward, I can create a project parameter. So I'm going to go into project parameters, and I have a parameter already in here called review status. I'm just going to go to modify that. And review status is a text parameter. So, and I just group it under text, and it gets applied to, right now it's just applied to all my views. I think in most cases you would want it for just for views. I could apply it to schedules as well if there was going to be some schedules that needed to be reviewed. And all this does is it adds that parameter to all of our views. So if I look under text, you can see, let me pull up a regular view, not a review view, but inside here, reviewer status, here we go. I can set that to be a particular value. So I can set that to be in process. I could set it to be complete. I can set it for any view. If there are elements that need to be reviewed, I can set that parameter right here. And where that becomes beneficial is, again, going back to our project browser. I'm going to edit, go to browser organization. And right now I have a project browser type set up for review. I'm just going to click on edit. And what this does is it's going to filter all of my views. It's going to look at that review status parameter, and it's going to check if that is equal to in process. So I could also set that it not equal to none. That would be another way. So if the status is not blank, meaning that there is a review status indicated in the parameter, whether it's in process or it's incomplete, I could use that as well. So I'm going to click OK, and I click OK. So now I can see just the views here. Let me close everything else to make it easier. I can see just the views that actually have a review or a process status. So if I go over here into text again, the review status is in process. So if I want to look at just my review views, this is a really good way to do that. And I do that again by just creating that project parameter, and that's going to allow me to kind of group and filter my views accordingly. Now, to take it another step, what I can do is I've created my floor plan or my view types. Let me go back to editing view types. I can add a view template that gets applied to new views. So let me click on that. I have a view template called review, and all that does, there's nothing to it. All that does is it sets the review status to in process. So anytime I create a new view and I apply it, the review view type to it, it's going to get that review status to be in process. So let's say I'm going to go into here, I'm going to create a new callout view. I want to, let's say, look at this corner right here. So let's create that. And here's our callout view. I can click on that. The default type is floor plan. Let's set that excuse me, to be review floor plan. So we change the type, and you'll see because I have that view template assigned, and all that view template is doing is adding that parameter value. Now it's going to show up in my kind of filtered project browser. So now I can go to my callout view, and then I can do whatever I want here. But this ensures that having the view type set up, they're always going to get that parameter applied. If I'm looking at the project browser and the project browser is set up to our review filter, our review browser type, then I'm just going to see all of those views grouped together. So this gives me another good way to organize my views and kind of keep them together. And again, so if somebody is working through them, I know that I want to go into these views. I could use my view types, my text note types. I could use my dimension types, add the notes here to kind of check out, but it's already being sort of categorized as a review type view. And again, all this is about sort of getting the right information, to the right people at the right time. So far these techniques work great if you're dealing with, plan views, section views, basically 2D views inside of Revit. Sometimes though you want to look at something or you want to highlight something that's more of a 3D element or it's in part of the 3D model. So using text notes isn't really going to work. Using our generic annotations isn't going to work as well. Another approach you can take, and let me change my browser type. Let's just go to all views, is to create what I call like review cubes. And all a review cube is it's a piece of geometry that has parameters associated to it. Oops, let's try this again. So I'm just switching over to a 3D view here, and you can see I have all of these funny looking little boxes on the model. So if I click on one of the boxes, this is it's a generic model, and it has parameters assigned, instance parameters for assigned to, comment, date, and reviewer, pretty much just like we used in our generic annotation family. Now, the benefit to these are face-based generic models, so I can actually apply them to surfaces on the model. So if I click on this one here, let's say I need to add a note, check roof drains. So I can just use that cube and it's just giving me a visual indication of a note of something to look at. I used a cube. You could use, I've seen it done with a sphere or some other kind of, primitive geometric shape that couldn't be identified or couldn't really be confused with actually being a building element. In all likelihood, you're not going to have these random squares placed around your building. You could, but you probably won't. So that this really becomes a way to carry review information. It is just a note that you can put there. So again, I can place these around. I'll open this family up. Let me go to edit family. And you can see it's real simple. It's just set up as a cube. If I open up the different types, I've created these category 1, category 2, and category 3. And the idea being that maybe you want to categorize your reviews, like is it a roofing issue? Is it a drainage issue? Is it a building systems or cladding issue? You could use different categories to kind of separate the types of issues or maybe who they get assigned to, or you could use them to indicate, what is critical, what is non-critical, or some way, but I think you could use color coding to differentiate that. And you'll see that each type has a different material assigned to it. And you can also, we could kind of play with this some more. We could change the sizes. So let's say that category 3 is 2 feet, and we'll say category 1 is 5 feet. So I'm going to just hit OK. And let's load that into the project. So now, in addition to color, we're changing the size of these things. We'll overwrite existing view. And it'll take a second. There we go. Oh, I didn't overwrite the types. Let me try that again. I can edit them actually straight in here. So I'll change there we go. Let's say we'll keep that as is. We'll go back. Sorry, I should have chosen that option when I brought them back in. Okay, we'll just do it for the one. Yeah. So now anything that's category 1, let's say that's an urgent issue, that's going to show up a lot bigger. And again, that gives me another visual cue as to, okay, these are things I really need to pay attention to. These are things I don't. So I can, again, click on one of these blocks. I'm going to create similar, and let's say we have an issue we want to look at, on the canopy. You can just place that block right there. I select it, right, like that. And let's say we're going to say check canopy, material. That's what's our date here. It is, okay, close enough. And I can go on again and just basically mark the model up in 3D. I can use, section views to cut through here, or a section box, and then just add all of my annotations. Now, like we did with the generic annotation object, what we can do here as well is we can schedule these. So it's a generic model. I'm going to go, I already have one set up called Review Cubes. So I'm going to click on that. Let's take a look at the fields. So it's a generic model, and you may have issues depending on how many different generic models you have. You may get some false positives, but we can sort of filter those out as well. Right now, this model is pretty clean, so there's not a lot of generic models. So I'm just seeing my view cubes. But again, we could filter out so we're just seeing the view cubes. And in the schedule, I'm showing the reviewer, the assigned to, the date, and then my comment. And I could sort in group. I could sort, actually, I would need to probably add another field that would, let's add our family and type. Actually, I think we could just do type. Here we go. Okay, and we'll move that up, and we'll sort and group by type. So now we can see them sorted by their categories. So if we were going to use those to identify particular issues or urgencies, we could do that right away. So I have 3 category type 1 reviews. I have a bunch. What do we have? 5 for type 2, and then 2 type 3. So again, I can use this as another way to separate and filter that information. And it's a pretty simple, real simple little geometry object. I can add it anywhere in the model, and then I can, use that to hold some data particular to a review or something that I want, somebody to check out. Now, another thing that I can do as well, let me go back to our family. Sometimes, in 3D views, you don't want these things to show up, particularly if you have, rendered views or 3D views that you're going to use elsewhere. So just real quick, inside, if I click on the cube itself, you'll see under here, under subcategory, I have a subcategory called review cube. Actually, I have a typo in there, so let's go fix that. I'm going to go over to manage, and I'm going to go to object styles. And so I had created a new object style. Let me rename that, not view cubed, view cube. Here we go. So that I created a new model category called review cube. And then I added my cube. I just added that as its subcategory. So I'm going to load this back into the project. Click OK. This time I will choose the correct overwrite existing version and parameter values. We'll see these things probably shift a little bit. No, actually I got the sizes right from last time. Okay, that guy got smaller. That's it. So now if I don't want to see my view cubes, I can just go to, I'm pressing VV for visibility. And you'll see I have a view template set up. So let me go to, I have an architectural presentation 3D view template. So I'm going to go to overrides model, and then I'm going to scroll down to generic model. I'm going to click that open, and I'm going to uncheck our review cube, and our review cube is still in there. So I'll uncheck both of those, and I can hit apply and OK. And you'll see, so now our review cubes disappear. And let's say I'm going to create a new, let's say, call it review 3D. And so I'm creating a new view template, and I'm just going to go back to our model overrides. I'm going to go to generic models, and I'm going to turn on our review cubes. So I click OK, and now I can apply that view template, and now they turn on. So I can easily have 2 different view templates, and I can set my views if I want to see the review cubes or if I don't. So it gives me another level of control here to be able to see those. And so I would definitely want to make sure I go through my model. You can see, let's go to some of these 3D views. I have some perspective views set up. Where maybe I do or maybe I don't want to see those kind of review notes. Let's take a look at this one. Hopefully Revit didn't crash. It'll come up in a second. Um, there we go. Yep. So in this view, I don't have a view template assigned, so I can see um, those particular notes, and then I can just switch this out with my view template, hit OK, and then they'll disappear. So that gives me again another way to kind of quality control, to show the notes where, or show these elements where I want to see them and where I don't. Same thing goes with, inside of my views, if there's particular text note types or generic annotation types, I can use sort of subcategories as a way to control the visibility of those. And that's an issue, I think, that needs to be considered, because you don't want to be sending out drawings that have all of your review notes and have, your internal dialogue in the model to kind of go out to the contractor, to the owner, until those, things have been resolved.
Quick question for you, Michael. Lionel makes the great point with text and dimensions. You can set the spot styles so that they don't print, so they're a no
Hmm.
plot style, right?
Yep.
Can you do that with the view cubes?
I don't think so. Let's take a look. Is this that's my tag. Sorry, let me jump back. Because they're actual model geometry, I don't think there's going to be a way to specify, and I could be wrong, but I don't think there's a way to make a non-plot element. Let me take a look at visibility. I could potentially set it up using visibility and graphics override to only show up in certain views. So that would be one way. I could also set it to only, show up with certain detail levels. But as far as not blanket making it non-plot, that I don't think you could do. Again, because it's model geometry. So I need to get clever with, my visibility and sort of my graphic overrides to do that. Let me go check one thing, and let me just see inside of manage object styles. If I take a look at that object style, hmm, I might be able to tweak this a little bit, but I think my best bet would be to just hide it. And then again, build that into my view templates in some way to do that.
Great. And then Hassan made the point, if possible, add materials to the walls and stairs. So I don't
Hmm.
remember at what point what you were talking about when he had typed that in. I apologize.
So, and that's actually one thing I didn't mention. Let me go to my floor plans. Here we go. So another thing we could do is, and thank you for the reminder on that, is that I could use filtering as a way, filtering my elements themselves based on the element parameters. And this, I do cover this in the course in a little bit more detail. The idea here is to use a filter to filter geometry based on a parameter. So in this example, I'm setting it up. I'm looking at fire rating. So I'm looking at the doors category and the walls category. And so the filter is set that if the fire rating of the walls or the doors equals 2 hours, if that is sort of equal to true, then I set it up to change the visibility of this to be yellow. And I've done this in templates quite a bit, where I will, particularly with fire ratings, I've done it with other elements as well, but looking at particular parameter values inside of the element, then using a filter to color code those. So this is a different type of review process, in that you're not sort of adding notes, you're just applying the filter, and then it's the review is happening automatically as part of the view. So if I click OK, these walls here and these doors are a little bit harder to see, but you can see that they're actually they're yellow. So anytime that a door in this view has that 2-hour fire rating, or a wall has that 2-hour fire rating, it's going to color code it automatically. So this is much more of a sort of automatic review process. And let me see if I add, I'm going to just change the wall type here. You'll see that it changes. I've used this process particularly if you're going to trying to coordinate your rated walls and your rated doors. So I'd want to look through this, and if I see a yellow door that's not in a yellow wall, that tells me that there's a mismatch between the two. So I would want to fix that. So clearly I don't need a rated door here, so I want to make sure I change that to something non-rated. And that's just a really good quick way to do that, and a visual way to do it. I love these types of views set up and having these filters baked into your template. That way you can just go through, and as you're building the model, you just flip over to that view real quick and then make that change. And again, it's a different type of review because it's happening automatically. But I think that those are in some ways the best ways because you don't have to do any work. You don't have to go through and manually check those and then write a note. So we do look at, what are, you can see I have a whole bunch of issues here with doors that are not the right type. So this gives me a quick way. So that's a great filters are really good for that. And they're easy to set up. So definitely look at those.
Excellent, excellent. So Lionel actually added another note to his original post, and he said that annotation, symbols, grids, levels, model elements such as generic models can all be modified so that they don't print using an add-in. So
Oh, no, cool.
Lionel,
Okay.
I don't know if you can tell us
That's
exactly which add-in that is. That would be great. And if you don't mind, I might even just open your lineup. Lionel, I'm going to unmute you. Are you able to speak to us?
Hey, can you hear
Hi.
me?
Yes, yes. Yeah, thanks for sharing your tips with us. That's wonderful. Do you remember the name of the add-in that
Yeah,
does that?
well, it's just called NoPlot. It's made by Tim Logan. I know there's another one on the App Store, but this one it's on GitHub. I'm trying to pull up the web address now, but out of all the add-ins we use, this is probably the one I couldn't live without.
Okay,
That's
We
great.
cool.
just use it for informational text and dimensions. Stuff that I want to see but don't want to print. But your ideas here would be a good application of it too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Because I think that's always the risk. Like, I don't want to put that stuff in the model because what happens if it sort of gets out? But that add-in sounds perfect because then it removes that element of fear that things are going to accidentally remain in the model when they shouldn't, or at least be printed. That's
Yeah, I'm
cool.
very
As long
Check that
surprised
out.
that Revit doesn't
long
have
as that
that
rest file
functionality
is
built in.
used. Uh, Excellent. Well, thank you, Lionel. I appreciate you sharing your expertise and your knowledge with everyone. That's what we're all here about to do, right? Right. So I don't see any other questions coming in. If you do have questions, feel free to raise your hand. I can unmute your line, or if you don't feel comfortable raising your hand and having me unmute your line, or if you don't have a microphone, go ahead and type your questions in the Q&A panel, and we'll stay on the line for about 15 more minutes to answer those.
Sounds good. You might hear my dog in the background soon.
No, yours isn't as loud as mine.
Okay.
It's funny. It's funny that this webinar is all about communication, because I usually put my dog outside for these, and I did put her out, but then the kids being home from school were, learning remotely, they let them back in. So it's all about communication. All right, we do have some more questions coming. Oh, actually, Lionel just shared with us the link that he found that add-on, so I'm going to share that with everyone and send that to everyone. Perfect.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for that tip. That's a good one. I'll check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric's asking the question, what breeds do you have? This Dobermans. Dobermans.
Oh,
Yeah, so I have a Labradoodle. She's the loud one, and then my bulldog is very quiet. He has
wow.
a baby bark still.
Nice. So our dog we got her as a rescue. And when we got her she was a puppy, they said she's a lab shepherd mix. So we're like,
Mm.
okay, that sounds interesting. But she never quite got to the lab size or the shepherd size. So we're like, we don't think that was quite right. And it turns out that she's actually what's called a Carolina dog, or they're known as, it's a Dixie dingo, which is, it's a native wild dog to the US. It's the only wild dog. And we happened to pass somebody who said, oh, that's a Carolina dog. And we're like, no, she's a mix, you know. And then we looked it up and it was like spot on. That is our dog. So
Ah,
they're found in South Carolina, which is where she came from. And yeah, so now we kind of know, like, oh, all right, that's our dog, because she's small, on the smaller side. So
yeah, excellent, excellent. Well, I love these tips. Lionel is actually sharing another link to some usage tips on that app, so I'm going to share that as well. And so just out of curiosity, how many in this call use Revit compared to AutoCAD? So if you use AutoCAD, go ahead and raise your hand so that I can kind of get a good idea on how many of you are doing that. So I see James Munsell and James Slice, Latrice, I believe that's how you might say your name. Okay, so we do have quite a few of you. So I do want to make sure that we rotate topics and rotate, software and everything, because I do recognize that some of you still use AutoCAD for architectural work. And so next month, our topic is actually on AutoCAD. I'll be joined by our product manager, Michael Folkers, who will be showing us all the new features of AutoCAD. And so if you're using AutoCAD, full-time or just part-time to do some, detailing and stuff, definitely join us on that call. That's on April 28th. And I've put the link to register for that event in the chat panel. So hopefully that came up when I put that in there. And then also, because we recognize that many of you are now working remote or may soon be working remote, Autodesk is making BIM 360 available to everyone for free until May, so that you can still keep working. We don't want the economy to die because of the COVID-19 stuff. So if you find yourself suddenly working remote, that is free so that you can keep working. If you've never touched it, never seen it before, we are holding free meetups where you can learn how to activate the product, start your first project, learn how to coordinate with everyone. There's a whole series that we're going to be doing, both for architects and for civil engineers. Now, the product that is free right now is the BIM 360 design that goes with Revit. There are other products available for civil engineers. The BIM 360 design is available for civil engineers, but it's right now we haven't been able to make it a trial version that you can use until May. So hopefully that changes very soon, but I'll keep you informed. But for those of you that do want to take advantage of the BIM 360 for coordination as you're working remotely, definitely register for that upcoming meetup. We'll have the first meetup on the Thursday of this week on the 26th. And again, I've put that information in the chat panel as well. So Melina is saying, hi, Michelle, I'm really interested about the upcoming BIM 360 webinar. I'm working for the Autodesk distributor in Germany, and I want to present this topic at our local partners soon. So thank you, Melina. I'm glad you just registered. That's wonderful. Yeah, and by the way, all of the meetups are recorded, just like this one was. And so we'll make those available. If you can't make the meetup time, still register, because that recording will go out to everyone who registered for the event. All right. So does anyone have any other questions coming in? I don't see any in the question panel. Or do you have anything you want to add to the presentation here, Michael?
no, I'm good. I think part of what I like about this topic in general is that it's useful to think about the ways you can use Revit tools in sort of non-standard ways. And so, we were looking at schedules, we're looking at, generic annotation that you would use typically for one way, but how can you use it to satisfy the needs like of this review process? And I think there's a whole bunch of different ways we could apply a lot of these tools in different contexts that end up being really useful. So it's kind of fun to figure out how you can, it's not like you're breaking Revit, but you're just using it in a different way that really helps facilitate the whole process.
Absolutely. And I can see this, taking it right over to AutoCAD for those of you who are AutoCAD users, setting up a specific layer for review and turning that to a NoPlot so that it doesn't print out accidentally. And you can put all your notes and symbols and geometry, whatever you want in there to be able to communicate and coordinate without any extra products.
Yeah. Annotative blocks is a perfect way, similar to the generic annotation in Revit.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I don't see any more questions coming in. We'll stay on for another minute. And if you don't have any other questions, then we'll let you get back to your day, because I know even though we're all working remote, we're still very, very busy. So we want to be respectful of your time. So if you do have questions, you can raise your hand in the Q&A or the participants panel, or add a question. Okay, I don't see any more coming in. So I want to thank all of you for joining, especially Michael. Thank you so much for pulling that presentation together. So, all right. Well, then everyone have a wonderful day. Stay safe and stay healthy. Take care.
All right. See ya.